The State of Immigration in the U.S., Trends, Challenges, and Recent Developments, 2025 Report. Part 1, Introduction and Historical Overview. 1. Introduction. The role of immigration in shaping America. Immigration has been a defining characteristic of the United States, influencing its economy, culture, and demographics for centuries. The country has long been a global destination for migrants seeking economic opportunity, political freedom, and safety from conflict or persecution. Today, the U.S. has more immigrants than any other country, hosting over 47.8 million foreign-born residents as of 2023, accounting for nearly one-fifth of the world's international migrants. Current debates and challenges. In recent years, U.S. immigration policy has become one of the most hotly debated topics in politics. Some of the key concerns include record border crossings and unauthorized immigration, visa backlogs and delays in legal immigration processing, DACA and pathways to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, labor shortages and the role of immigrants in the economy, state versus federal immigration policies, particularly in states like Texas, Florida, and California. The 2024 election cycle further intensified immigration debates, with candidates offering contrasting visions for the future of U.S. immigration policy. Historical overview of immigration in the U.S. Early immigration, 1600s 1800s European dominance. From the colonial era to the early 20th century, European immigrants dominated migration to the U.S. 1600s to 1700s, British, Dutch, and French settlers established the first European colonies. 1800s, major waves of Irish and German immigrants arrived due to famine and political upheaval. By 1880, nearly 90% of U.S. immigrants were from Europe, particularly from Germany, Ireland, and Scandinavia. The U.S. government encouraged immigration to fuel industrialization and westward expansion. The Great Wave, 1880 to 1920 Ellis Island and mass migration. Between 1880 and 1920, more than 23 million immigrants arrived in the U.S., many from Italy, Poland, and Russia. Key changes included the opening of Ellis Island, 1892, as the main immigration processing center. The rise of urban immigrant communities, with many settling in New York, Chicago, and Boston. The 1910 census reporting that 14.8% of the U.S. population was foreign-born, a historic high. However, growing concerns over cultural change led to anti-immigrant sentiment and restrictive laws. Restrictive immigration laws, 1920 to 1965. The early 20th century saw a backlash against immigration. Immigration Act of 1924 limited immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe and completely banned Asian immigrants. Great Depression, 1930s immigration slowed dramatically as economic hardship increased. World War II, 1940 some immigration restrictions were eased, leading to the arrival of refugees from war-torn Europe. By 1960, the foreign-born population had dropped to just 5.4% of the total U.S. population. The 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act, a new era begins. A major turning point came with the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act, which eliminated race-based quotas and opened immigration to Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Created a system prioritizing family reunification and skilled workers. Led to an explosion in diversity, as immigrants from Latin America and Asia outnumbered Europeans for the first time. Since 1965, over 72 million immigrants have entered the U.S., transforming its racial and ethnic makeup. Immigration in the late 20th century, 1980 to 2000s the rise of unauthorized immigration. 1986 Immigration Reform and Control Act, IRCA granted amnesty to 2.7 million undocumented immigrants, but also increased border enforcement. 1990 Immigration Act, increased legal immigration caps and introduced the diversity visa lottery. Post 9/11, 2001, 2010's stricter security measures made legal immigration more difficult, but unauthorized migration continued to rise. By 2010, the foreign-born population reached 40 million, accounting for 13% of all U.S. residents. Part 2. Current immigration trends and demographics, 2023 to 2025. 3. Immigration trends in the 21st century. The foreign-born population reaches record highs. As of 2023, the U.S. foreign-born population reached 47.8 million, the highest number in U.S. history. This represents 14.3% of the total U.S. population, the highest share since 1910, 14.8%. Key growth statistics, 2022 to 2023. Increase of 1.6 million immigrants in just 1 year, 2022 to 2023, the largest annual increase since 2000. Immigrant population expected to exceed 50 million by 2030, driven by continued migration. Changing sources of immigration, with more arrivals from Asia, Africa, and Latin America than in past decades. Where do U.S. immigrants come from? Top countries of birth for U.S. immigrants, 2022 to 2023. 1. Mexico, 10.6 million, 23% of all U.S. immigrants. 2. India, 6%. 3. China, 5%. 4. Philippines, 4%. 5. El Salvador, 3%. Regional breakdown of immigrants in the U.S. Asia, 28%. Latin America, 27%, excluding Mexico. Europe, Canada, and other North America, 12%. Sub-Saharan Africa, 5%. Middle East and North Africa, 4%. Changing migration patterns. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, Europe dominated immigration to the U.S. Since 1965, Latin America and Asia have become the largest sources of new immigrants. In the past decade, immigration from Mexico has slowed, while arrivals from India, China, and Venezuela have surged. Where do immigrants live in the U.S.? Top 4 states for immigrants, 2022 to 2023. 1. California, 10.4 million, 23% of all U.S. immigrants. 2. Texas, 5.2 million, 11%. 3. Florida, 4.8 million, 10%. 4. New York, 4.5 million, 10%. Regional breakdown of immigrant population. South, 35%. West, 33%. Northeast, 21%. Midwest, 11%. Urban versus rural immigration trends. 63% of all immigrants live in just 20 major metropolitan areas. New York City, Los Angeles, and Miami have the largest immigrant populations. The South and Midwest are seeing faster immigrant population growth than traditional immigrant hubs. 4. Immigration and the U.S. economy. The role of immigrants in the U.S. workforce. In 2022, over 30 million immigrants were part of the U.S. workforce, making up 18% of all workers. Breakdown of immigrant workers, 2022. Lawful immigrants, 22.2 million. Unauthorized immigrants, 8.3 million. Sectors with high immigrant representation. Agriculture, 50% of farm workers are immigrants. Construction, 30% of workers. Healthcare, 27% of physicians and 38% of home health aides. Technology, immigrants hold 25% of STEM jobs. Economic impact of immigrants. Immigrants pay over $300 billion in federal, state, and local taxes annually. Entrepreneurship, 25% of new U.S. businesses are founded by immigrants. Labor force growth, immigration offsets the aging workforce caused by baby boomer retirements. Wages and employment effects. Studies show little to no impact of immigration on native-born wages. Some sectors, like low-skill labor, may see slight wage suppression, while others, like STEM and healthcare, see gains. 5. Unauthorized immigration, numbers, trends, and policies. Size of the unauthorized immigrant population. As of 2022, there were about 11 million unauthorized immigrants in the U.S. This number has remained relatively stable since 2007. Key trends. Unauthorized immigration declined from 2007 to 2019 but rose again in 2021 to 2023 due to economic disruptions and humanitarian crises. A growing share of unauthorized immigrants now overstay visas rather than crossing the border illegally. Mexican unauthorized population has declined, while numbers from Central America, Venezuela, and Africa have risen. Border crossings and asylum seekers, 2023 to 2024 data. Record high border encounters in 2023, over 2.5 million encounters at the US-Mexico border. Humanitarian crisis, a sharp rise in asylum seekers from Venezuela, Cuba, and Haiti. Texas and Arizona declare border emergencies due to migrant surges. DACA and legalization efforts. DACA, deferred action for childhood arrivals. About 600,000 Dreamers remain in legal limbo. Bipartisan proposals to provide a path to citizenship for some unauthorized immigrants have stalled in Congress. State-level policies vary. Some states provide driver's licenses and in-state tuition, while others impose stricter immigration laws. 6. Immigrants and education in the U.S. How educated are U.S. immigrants? Educational attainment of immigrants versus U.S.-born, 2022. Less than high school, 25% of immigrants versus 7% of U.S.-born. Bachelor's degree or higher, 35% of immigrants versus 36% of U.S.-born. Variations by region of birth. Highly educated groups. South Asian immigrants, 72% hold at least a bachelor's degree. European immigrants, 55% have a college degree. Less educated groups. Mexican immigrants, 51% have not completed high school. Central American immigrants, 46% lack a high school diploma. STEM and high-skill immigration. H-1B visa holders, over 70% of H-1B visas go to Indian and Chinese tech workers. International students, over 1 million foreign students study in the U.S., mainly from China, India, and South Korea. Part 3, Immigration Policies, Citizenship, and Recent Political Developments, 2024 to 2025. 7. Immigration Policy Changes under the Biden Administration. The Biden administration has pursued a mix of expansionary and restrictive immigration policies, balancing humanitarian concerns with border enforcement. Key Biden administration immigration actions, 2023 to 2024. 1. DACA protection. Renewed legal protections for Dreamers, undocumented immigrants brought as children. Efforts to expand pathways to citizenship for DACA recipients remain stalled in Congress. 2. Border enforcement and restrictions. Increased deportations of recent arrivals and expedited asylum processing at the U.S.-Mexico border. Expansion of Title 42 expulsions before it was revoked in May 2023, leading to an influx of asylum seekers. New border security measures in Texas and Arizona. 3. New legal pathways for immigrants. Expansion of temporary protected status, TPS, for Venezuelans, Haitians, and Ukrainians. Increase in employment-based green cards and high-skill worker visas. 4. Humanitarian and refugee policies. The U.S. set new refugee caps. 125,000 refugees admitted in 2023, highest since the 1990s. Special humanitarian parole for Afghans and Ukrainians. 5. Crackdown on unauthorized work and fraud. Increased enforcement against companies hiring unauthorized workers. Targeted visa fraud investigations in student and work visa programs. 8. Citizenship and naturalization trends. Naturalization numbers, 2022 to 2024. Almost 1 million immigrants became U.S. citizens in 2022. Naturalization rates remain high, but barriers include language requirements, cost, and backlogs. Who becomes a U.S. citizen? Mexican immigrants are the largest group eligible for citizenship but have the lowest naturalization rates. Asian immigrants have the highest naturalization rates, especially Indian and Filipino immigrants. Challenges in the citizenship process. USCIS backlog, over 700,000 citizenship applications are still pending. Cost of application, $725 fee is a barrier for low-income immigrants. English and civics test, some immigrants struggle with the naturalization test. Efforts to streamline naturalization. Biden administration removed barriers for low-income applicants and expanded fee waivers. Online applications have sped up processing times. 9. Immigration in the 2024 presidential election. How immigration became a top election issue. Border security, asylum policy, and legal immigration reform have dominated the 2024 election debates. Republicans argue for stricter enforcement, mass deportations, and border wall expansion. Democrats focus on legal pathways, DACA protection, and humane border policies. Republican versus Democratic immigration proposals, 2024. 10. State-level immigration laws and policies. States expanding immigrant rights, 2023 to 2024. Several Democratic-led states have expanded immigrant protections, including California, Illinois, and New York, expanded healthcare access for undocumented immigrants. Washington and Oregon allowed driver's licenses for all residents, regardless of immigration status. Massachusetts and New Jersey provided in-state tuition to undocumented students. Washington and Oregon allowed driver's licenses for all residents, regardless of immigration status. Massachusetts and New Jersey provided in-state tuition to undocumented students. States enacting stricter immigration laws. Texas, SB 4, 2023 allowed state law enforcement to deport migrants, challenged in court. Florida, SB 1718, 2023 required businesses to verify immigration status and banned local sanctuary policies. Arizona and Georgia increased immigration enforcement through local police. Legal challenges to state immigration policies. Texas migrant deportation law is facing a Supreme Court challenge over whether states can enforce federal immigration laws. Florida's employer verification law is being challenged by business groups. 11. Recent Supreme Court cases on immigration, 2023 to 2024. Key cases and rulings. 1. Biden v. Texas, 2023. Ruled that the Biden administration can remain in Mexico, a Trump-era policy forcing asylum seekers to wait in Mexico. 2. United States v. Texas, 2023. Limited Texas' ability to arrest and deport unauthorized immigrants under state law. 3. DACA legal battle, ongoing 2024. Federal courts are considering whether DACA is constitutional. If struck down, 600,000 Dreamers could face deportation. 4. Texas and Florida immigration laws, 2024 Supreme Court review. The court will rule on whether states can enforce immigration laws independently of the federal government. 12. Future immigration trends and projections, 2025 to 2030. What's next for U.S. immigration? 1. Rising immigration from Latin America and Africa. Venezuelan, Cuban, and Nicaraguan migration is increasing due to economic crises. More African migrants are coming to the U.S. due to instability in Sudan, Ethiopia, and the Sahel region. 2. Shift toward high-skill immigration. More Indian and Chinese tech workers are applying for H-1B visas. U.S. companies are pushing for more STEM immigration to fill labor shortages. 3. Climate migration will increase. Hurricanes, droughts, and sea level rise will displace millions worldwide. The U.S. may have to consider new refugee policies for climate migrants. Conclusion: the future of immigration in the U.S. U.S. immigration policy remains one of the most contentious and evolving political issues. While immigration has historically fueled economic growth and innovation, concerns over border security, unauthorized migration, and legal pathways continue to shape the debate. In the coming years, the U.S. will face critical decisions on border management and asylum policies, the future of DACA and Dreamers, expanding high-skill immigration to support the economy, managing humanitarian crises and climate migration.